Herophilus's live human dissections. Kickstarting our grim gallery at a time when anesthesia was just a twinkle in the distant future, let's travel to ancient Alexandria. Imagine being a live canvas for Horophilus, the father of anatomy, who, in his quest for knowledge, peeled back the mysteries of the human body without a drop of pain relief. Were these subjects volunteers? Not quite. They were prisoners, and their screams were the soundtrack of science in the making. Chilling, right? Da Vinci's ruthless research. Fast forward to the Renaissance, where the genius Da Vinci wasn't just painting masterpieces, but also dissecting bodies in the dead of night. It's one thing to steal hearts with art, another to literally steal hearts for science. Leonardo's moonlit autopsies gave us insights into the human body that textbooks would worship. But let's just say his methods were unorthodox. Who knew the Mona Lisa's smile was hiding such secrets? Mengele's genetic nightmares. Trigger warning. This section contains descriptions of extreme cruelty. Let's step into the chilling world of Josef Mengele, the notorious angel of death at Auschwitz. His macabre twin experiments were a grim emblem of Nazi cruelty, delving into genetics by injecting dyes into children's eyes to study eye color changes, stitching twins together to create Siamese twins, and performing forced sterilizations and unanesthetized amputations. These grisly tests inflicted unimaginable suffering on Jewish and Roma twins without a shred of consent or anesthesia. Mengele's lab wasn't a haven of discovery, but a haunting chamber of horrors, driven by an ideology so warped it makes even mad science blush. Tuskegee syphilis study. Imagine being an impoverished black man in 1930s Alabama, misled into believing you're receiving free health care for bad blood. But the real disease? A warped experiment where doctors intentionally let syphilis ravage your body, even after penicillin became the cure. For 40 harrowing years, the Tuskegee study tracked hundreds of men, denying them treatment to study syphilis's horrific progression. As their bodies decayed, so did medical ethics, sacrificing human lives on the altar of scientific curiosity. It took a 1972 leak to finally halt this sickening deception, a grim reminder that the road to progress can be paved with unforgivable cruelty. Unit 731, a secret Japanese facility during World War II, was a true house of horrors. Under the command of Shiro Ishii, this unit conducted vile experiments on thousands of Chinese civilians and prisoners of war. These included live vivisections, intentional infections with plague and cholera, and tests of biological weapons under brutal conditions. The full extent of these atrocities came to light only after the war, leading to an international outcry over the grave breaches of wartime conduct and human ethics. KGB's deadly poisons. Deep in the shadows of the Soviet Union, the KGB wasn't just spying on enemies, they were cooking up a lethal recipe book. Cloaked in secrecy, their scientists tested poisons on unwitting prisoners that could kill faster than you could recite the alphabets. These weren't your run-of-the-mill toxins. We're talking concoctions so insidious, they could strike down targets with a mere whiff or touch, crafting a grim arsenal for political assassinations. It's the real-life version of a villain's master plan. Project 4.1. During the Cold War era, a disturbing event unfolded in the Marshall Islands. In 1954, a U.S. nuclear bomb test went awry, exposing residents of the Rongelap and Utirik atolls to dangerous radioactive fallout. However, instead of immediate evacuation, the government saw an opportunity for a sickening experiment. Residents were left exposed to study the effects of radiation, while scientists gathered data on their deteriorating health. Children played in the ash-laden radioactive snow, oblivious to the deadly poison invading their bodies. It's one of those moments where you wonder, was it ignorance or was it indifference? CIA's mind control trials. Ever thought your mind was playing tricks on you? Well, during the MK-Ultra experiments, that was literally the CIA's goal. From dosing unsuspecting citizens with LSD to hypnosis and electroshocks, the quest was aimed to master brainwashing techniques. The scariest part? It wasn't science fiction, it was taxpayer-funded reality. Next time you forget why you walked into a room, just blame MK Ultra, the Guatemalan syphilis scandal. Let's dial back to the 1940s, where in Guatemala, the U.S. Public Health Service was playing matchmaker with a dark twist. They deliberately infected people with syphilis and gonorrhea to study treatments. The purpose? To test the effectiveness of penicillin. Patients thought they were receiving health care, but were instead getting a disease on a silver platter. The line between helping and harming was not just crossed, it was obliterated. Jewish hospital cancer studies. Picture this: New York, 1960s, and a hospital that decided cancer cells were an appropriate gift to unwitting patients. At the Jewish Chronic Disease Hospital, doctors injected cancer cells into subjects without their knowledge to see how their bodies would react. It's one thing to fight cancer, but it's another to be secretly drafted into the battle. Talk about a betrayal you can't even see coming. The Plutonium Files. In the chilling saga of the Plutonium Files, doctors in the US decided that the periodic table was their playground. Between 1945 and 1947, they injected 18 unsuspecting patients, including a 4-year-old child, with plutonium and other radioactive materials, all without consent. The objective? To study how these elements move and remain in the human body. Imagine a smiling nurse arriving not with a lollipop, but with a syringe full of radioactive horrors destined for your veins. It's a sickening betrayal of trust, where the very people meant to heal became dealers of radioactive poison. Ethical boundaries. More like ethical black holes in this dark chapter of medical research. The Stanford Prison Experiment. Dive into the twisted world of the Stanford Prison Experiment, a quest to uncover the effects of power and authority. Students donned guard and prisoner roles, sparking chaos and cruelty. The experiment's abrupt end in 6 days showcased the dark transformation. Guards turned sadistic, prisoners rebelled, and retribution took a naked turn, isolating ringleaders. It's a psychological thriller minus the popcorn, revealing how close we are to losing our humanity for a uniform. Stasi's mind control trials. During the Cold War, East Germany's Stasi conducted harrowing psychological experiments aimed at mastering mind control. Subjects were isolated, bombarded with white noise and disorienting lights, and subjected to drug-enhanced interrogations to induce stress and confusion. These brutal tactics, often used on unsuspecting citizens suspected of dissent, were designed to break wills and suppress individual thought, showcasing the Stasi's extreme measures to control the populace. Willowbrook Hepatitis Study. Next up, the Willowbrook State School, where education included hepatitis exposure. From the 1950s to 1970s, children with developmental disabilities were intentionally infected with hepatitis. The aim? To track the virus's progression and develop a vaccine. Intentions may have been good, but ethics were left at the door. Sometimes the road to medical advancement is paved with far too many ethical potholes. Stateville Malaria Experiments. At Stateville Penitentiary in the 1940s, inmates faced an unusual proposition: exchange parole for participation in malaria experiments. They were deliberately exposed to malaria-infected mosquitoes to test new drugs. This government-led study raised serious ethical concerns about consent and coercion, particularly with vulnerable groups like prisoners. Imagine serving time and unwittingly becoming a part of a medical trial. It's like being trapped in dual prisons you never signed up for. Milgram's Shock Experiment. The 1961 Milgram experiment shockingly revealed how far people would go in obeying an authority figure. Participants, under the guise of a learning experiment, administered what they believed were painful electric shocks to others, urged on by an authority figure. The results highlighted the disturbing depths of compliance individuals are capable of, significantly impacting psychology and our understanding of human morality and authority. Algeria's nuclear nightmares. From 1960 to 1966, France conducted nuclear tests in the Algerian Sahara, exposing local populations and military personnel to harmful radiation levels without proper safeguards or consent. The aftermath left environmental contamination and ongoing health crises among survivors. The French government's delayed response and minimal recognition of the suffering continue to provoke legal battles and demands for reparations from the victims and their descendants. Heaven's Gate. Diving into cult madness, Heaven's Gate mixed UFO beliefs with extreme human testing. Members underwent castration among other trials, believing it prepped them for extraterrestrial life. It's one thing to follow a cult. It's another to submit to medical experiments for a space odyssey. The crossover of belief and science here? More like science fiction with a tragic twist. From ancient Alexandria to modern times, we've journeyed through a grim gallery of human exploitation in the name of science. Yet these disturbing chapters also birthed hard-won ethical codes like the Nuremberg Laws and Helsinki Declaration, raising the collective conscience. Stay woke, stay questioning, for only an enlightened society can prevent history's sickening cycles from repeating endlessly. Thanks for watching.